Breaking. This was never about missiles. Not this time. Dubai has just delivered a silent strike that Iran never saw coming. And the damage is already irreversible. No explosions, no warning sirens, just a slow, suffocating shutdown of the one lifeline that kept Tehran alive under years of relentless sanctions. For decades, Iran survived by hiding behind Dubai's shadow economy, a covert financial artery that quietly pumped billions into a collapsing system. But in a single miscalculation, Tehran crossed a line that triggered something far more dangerous than war economic annihilation from within. What happened next didn't just shake Iran's economy. It may have sealed its fate. And the most shocking part? This collapse was set in motion long before anyone realized it had already begun. This is where the real story begins, and it's far bigger than anyone expected. To understand the shock now hitting Tehran, you have to look at the hidden system that kept Iran alive for decades. Dubai was not just a neighbor across the Gulf. It was Iran's economic backdoor, the one channel that kept money, goods, and power flowing when the world tried to shut everything down. Since the first US sanctions in 1979, and especially after the brutal financial crackdowns in the mid-2000s, Iran should have been economically suffocated. Banks were cut off, oil exports were targeted, global trade routes collapsed. On paper, it was game over, but in reality, it never happened, because Dubai stepped in quietly, strategically, and decisively. By 2010, over 8,000 Iranian-linked companies were operating inside Dubai's free zones, turning the city into a massive sanctions evasion engine. Trade surged to nearly $28 billion. Inside Deira's shadowy exchange, houses' currencies moved in silence. At Jebel Ali, one of the busiest ports on Earth, shipments arrived, were relabeled and disappeared into global markets as if they had never come from Iran at all. This wasn't ordinary trade. It was a perfectly engineered system designed to bypass every restriction imposed by the West. Even US officials admitted that Dubai had become the single most critical hub keeping Iran's economy breathing. But the real power of this network wasn't just in ships or money, it was in people. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians lived, worked, and built businesses inside Dubai, embedding themselves deep into its economic core. Every transaction, every shipment, every transfer created a steady financial current flowing back into Iran. Oil moved in secret at night. Goods moved in daylight under clean paperwork. Money moved through layered accounts that erased every trace. It was fast, efficient, and almost impossible to stop. And that is exactly why what happened next is so devastating. Because when a system this deeply entrenched begins to break, it doesn't just hurt, it collapses everything connected to it. Sanctions only truly bite when money and goods are completely cut off. As long as those channels remained open, the pressure never fully landed. Without Dubai, the squeeze would have hit Iran far faster and far harder. Factories would have ground to a halt within weeks instead of dragging on for years. Hospitals would have seen shelves empty almost overnight, forcing doctors to improvise with whatever scraps remained. Beyond Iran's borders, the impact would have been equally devastating. Funding pipelines to groups like Hezbollah, the Houthis, and militias in Iraq would have snapped shut, slashing Tehran's ability to project power across the region. But none of that happened because Dubai stayed wide open. Money continued flowing through side channels. Trade routes kept appearing. The economy stayed just above the breaking point. Each year, between $16 and $28 billion in sanctioned trade moved through these networks, with another $6 to $7 billion in non-oil exports layered on top. It was never perfect. Deals collapsed, risks ran high, and guarantees were non-existent. Yet it was just enough to keep factories running at minimal levels, hospitals supplied at basic capacity, and allies funded so Tehran could maintain its influence. That small margin of survival made all the difference in a system under constant siege. Dubai did not eliminate the pressure. It simply gave Iran room to breathe. And And in the brutal world of sanctions, the distance between breathing and suffocating decides everything. Then 2026 arrived and shattered the illusion forever. The war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran spilled violently into the Gulf. In a move that stunned observers, Iran turned its weapons directly against the UAE, the very neighbor that had quietly sustained its economy for decades. This was no random escalation. It was a profound act of betrayal that would trigger a retribution Tehran never anticipated. As strikes began in late February and intensified through March, the reaction was immediate and brutal. Investors fled, markets plunged, confidence evaporated almost overnight. UAE stock markets lost more than $120 billion in combined value, with Dubai's main index crashing around 16% in mere weeks. Property deals froze. Trading floors emptied during alerts. The steady, calm rhythm that defined Dubai began to fracture. What once felt like an untouchable safe haven now pulsed with uncertainty. At the heart of the crisis stood Iran's staggering miscalculation. Tehran did not just escalate the conflict. It deliberately targeted the very economic lifeline that had kept it alive. The UAE absorbed roughly 63% of the overall early barrage that began on the 28th of February. In just 2 weeks, more than 450 ballistic missiles and nearly 2,000 drones rained down on critical UAE infrastructure. Airports, ports, oil terminals, and energy systems all fell under direct fire. Jebel Ali's loading operations slowed dramatically. Business flights vanished as airspace risks soared. The city's image as a global hub cracked in real time. Beyond the infrastructure numbers came the human tragedy that turned cold strategy into raw emotion. At least 12 civilians lost their lives. Around 190 people suffered injuries. Military casualties added to the toll. When lives are lost, the equation changes forever. This was no longer abstract economics or distant strategy. It became a question of security trust and whether any place could truly call itself safe. That betrayal marked the irreversible turning point. Iran had treated Dubai like a permanent partner that would tolerate anything for the sake of profit. Tehran assumed business would always trump politics. Once the missiles struck, that illusion died. Iran had torched the one bridge it desperately needed, and the UAE responded with a vengeance that was quiet, precise, and utterly devastating. Despite the barrage of hundreds of missiles and drones, the UAE chose restraint and refused to answer with direct military force. Instead, it unleashed something far more lethal in the long term. It went straight for the financial throat. In early March, billions of Iranian assets were frozen inside UAE banks. These were not idle private accounts. They were regime-linked funds, shell companies hiding illicit trade and hidden reserves that had sustained Tehran's networks for years. When those accounts locked, it was not merely money being held. It was oxygen being cut off from the Iranian regime. Exchange houses that had operated for decades suddenly faced intense scrutiny. These were the vital arteries converting shadow oil sales into usable cash. Security teams launched coordinated raids across Dubai, arresting dozens of money changers directly tied to IRGC networks. Trusted operators who had moved funds invisibly for years were removed in one surgical strike. The entire chain began to break because those exchange houses connected oil to cash, cash to logistics, and logistics to operations on the ground. The crackdown accelerated into the business and human layers with ruthless efficiency. The United Arab Emirates began canceling residency visas of Iranian nationals currently outside the country, including high-value golden visa holders with significant business and property investments. Iranian-linked institutions in Dubai faced sudden shutdowns. Schools closed their doors. The Iranian hospital ceased operations. Consular presence shrank to minimal staff. Offices were sealed without warning. Companies that had thrived for years found themselves locked out. Visas were revoked, Renewals halted. Families who had lived in Dubai for decades suddenly faced the risk of losing legal status. Business owners scrambled to adjust or relocate entirely. Each move multiplied the pressure. Frozen assets stopped cash flow. Shuttered exchange houses stalled currency conversions. Closed companies eliminated trade routes. Tightened visas removed the people who kept the system alive. Uncertainty spread like wildfire. Even remaining operations faced constant audits, higher insurance costs, and endless delays. Every shipment grew more expensive. Every transaction took longer. Proximity that once served as an advantage now became a deadly weakness. Ships rerouted at massive extra cost. New registrations drew immediate scrutiny. Front companies that once blended in now stood out like targets. On top of existing Western sanctions, this new pressure landed with crushing force. The impact inside Iran was almost immediate. Billions in frozen assets and severed Dubai channels triggered panic. The Rial plunged to an all-time low, trading at roughly 1.47 million to the dollar on the parallel market. Inflation, already above 42% at the end of 2025, surged past 50%. Bread prices climbed another 18%, while rice rose 12% in the first quarter alone. Savings evaporated overnight. Medicines and spare parts that once flowed through Dubai began disappearing from shelves. Production lines slowed. Families felt the pain in their daily lives with shocking speed. The UAE itself absorbed real costs. Property markets softened. Transactions dropped around 12% in the first quarter of 2026. Tourism fell about 8% as visitors avoided a region under threat. Stock markets took a heavy hit. Yet the difference in response was stark. The UAE accepted short-term pain to secure long-term safety. National security now outweighed commercial comfort. Staying open while under attack no longer signaled strength. It signaled vulnerability. And vulnerability invited further aggression. So Dubai made its choice. Take the economic hit now and close the door that once stayed open forever. This confrontation traces back to years of shifting alignments. The UAE had steadily deepened ties with the United States militarily and economically while developing quiet but unmistakable connections with Israel. From Tehran's perspective, these moves transformed Dubai from a neutral trading partner into an extension of Iran's greatest adversaries. Every defense deal with Washington, every joint exercise, every sign of coordination with Israel reinforced that view. Striking the UAE became both retaliation and a calculated message. Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones not merely to cause damage but to shatter Dubai's image as a safe, stable hub. The goal was to deter further alignment with the West and to prove that no Gulf state could hide behind American or Israeli protection. Yet in doing so, Iran destroyed the very system that had kept it alive. The UAE responded by tightening its grip on the Strait of Hormuz, pushing for a Chapter 7 resolution at the United Nations that could authorize force to keep shipping lanes open and committing resources to mine clearing and naval escort operations. Nearly 20% of the world's oil flows through that narrow passage. When Iran attempted to choke it, oil prices spiked above $110 per barrel. Tankers rerouted around Africa, adding weeks and millions in extra costs. Insurance premiums surged 300%. Global ripple effects hit consumers everywhere with higher fuel bills and rising food prices. This is the moment everything snapped. The UAE, backed by over $1.5 trillion in sovereign power and unmatched control of Gulf logistics, made a decision that changed the game overnight. No more quiet cooperation, no more backdoor survival for Tehran. Dubai didn't just step back, it shut the system down. Visas were canceled, businesses collapsed. Hospitals that had served Iranians for decades were forced to close. Schools went dark. Families who had built entire lives inside Dubai watched everything disappear in weeks. What once felt permanent turned fragile overnight. But this wasn't chaos, it was calculated. A message to the region and the world's stability comes first, and betrayal has consequences. Investors saw strength, Gulf states saw a line finally drawn. And Iran, it lost the one lifeline that had kept its economy breathing for decades. This wasn't just pressure, this was economic suffocation. Precise, controlled, and devastating. Iran didn't just lose access. It lost trust infrastructure and time. And all of it traces back to one fatal mistake turning against the very system that kept it alive. Now the question is unavoidable. Was this the moment Iran sealed its own fate? Stay locked in here for the fastest updates on this unfolding drama, because the pressure in the Gulf is only intensifying. If this rapid breakdown of Dubai's devastating counterstrike against Iran's betrayal kept you glued to the screen, smash that like button, subscribe for every breaking development, and share it with everyone following this high-stakes conflict. Disclaimer: this video contains content generated or supported in whole or in part by artificial intelligence. This material is intended solely for simulation, illustration, and entertainment purposes. It does not represent real-world events, nor does it constitute political or military advice or verified information. Certain elements may be fictional, dramatized, or inaccurate. Viewers should not rely on this video as a credible source of information or as a basis for real-world decision-making.